Okay, if you're doing trim sheets in ZBrush, it's a similar sort of approach. Basically, what you'll do is select, and you can use the slice tool for this as well, but you'll basically reorganize the model into a few different polygroups. So I'll be careful. Sometimes too, when you hit Control W, it'll appear as though it's a different group. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this plane. I'll make the original plane just a single polygroup. This one I'm going to split, and I'll show you why in a second. So I'm going to go to split, group split. So they'll each basically be their own subtool. Now, what I usually do at this point is I will basically use Z Modeler, hover over a polygon, and basically extrude all polys, like so. Go into the next subtool, do the same thing. And for the final one, the same thing. And you may want to just push these back a little bit. Sometimes I'll also just scale them a bit wider as well. So I'll show you why that's kind of important. Yeah, let's do this one as well. So then what I wind up doing is I kind of use my, I'll turn off the visibility. So I'll sort of focus on one at a time. So I'm going to basically turn on the little downward arrow on the subtool. That's the Boolean tool, okay? And if I turn on, and this is my custom interface, if I turn on live Boolean under mesh editing, or if you're on the default, let me just go back to default for a second, restore standard. I believe it's up here in the upper left. So live Boolean's right there. And then you have to go over into geometry, I believe somewhere in here, make Boolean mesh. Anyways, I prefer my custom, so I'll go back to the custom. Now, what's kind of cool about this, so if you take a look at the subtool, I'm just going to work on this first one. I only want to work on the space that's overlapping. So if you hit this icon, it's the one on the far right next to the paintbrush. It's like two circles overlapping with kind of white in the middle. What that means is now, let's say if I go to insert a brush in here, for example, so I'll pick something a bit more interesting, like some mechanical parts or whatever, right? If I drag this out, what's cool about that is it auto clips it off. So it's almost like retaining everything within that space, right? Because of this this Boolean operation, it's only allowing me to kind of see things inside the inside that space. So that's great. So let's say if you go to B for brush, C for curve, I'll do curve tube. Yeah, curve tube. Where's curve tube? Yeah, there we go, curve tube. Okay, so if I drag this across, right, it'll sort of keep the tube within this zone, basically. Screwed up, I was drawing on the wrong subtool and undoing. So yeah, if I'm back in live Boolean, okay, sorry about that. Yeah, I had a little issue. I was kind of mixing up all my subtools. So just be very careful when using this. So I'll go to insert cylinder here, right? So if you drag out a cylinder, you see it sort of perfectly will kind of clip it off. The one thing you want to make sure is that if you're moving anything, you want things to be relatively seamless. So you may have to check and make sure that your mesh kind of syncs up beginning to end, okay? So no matter whatever you're sculpting or building, you will have to kind of try to make sure there's some synchronization. The other thing I do recommend, let me just undo this. I'm going to duplicate this one more time. So I'll kind of keep the one duplicate kind of hidden, unseen, turned off in terms of visibility. So that way, if you wanted to divide up this mesh and sculpt it raw, you can. And I want to show you what that looks like. So by the way, when you divide, it will kind of round out the corners. So what I recommend too is also just hitting crease and divide, or turning off division. So if you do want to sculpt within these spaces, turn off smooth and you can divide up probably to 1,000,000 plus polys. So if we're sculpting too, I'm going to show you another method you could use to kind of have seamless sculpting. So if I'm trying to sculpt something and have a pattern, there's a little trick in here called brush. I believe it's under modifiers, or where is it? Surface? No, I always forget where this thing is. Samples. No. Depth, no. Curve. Curve, wrap mode. So wrap mode is kind of like an old school repetition technique. So if you take a look now, you can kind of have this thing sync up, right? So if you're drawing, sculpting, and you want something seamless, then it'll allow you to produce that, okay? So it's really, really useful for this kind of like tiling technique if you're doing something by hand, all right? So this would be the same process. So once you kind of sculpt that region, I usually would sort of hide off these two pieces, and you can create your own folder. So I'd say Control F, we can just call it the lower section. I'll drag these two in here. So these are kind of part of one set. And turn off the visibility. I'll duplicate this again. Hit Control F, maybe this will be the middle, and I'm not sure which chunk. Yeah, this one here is the middle, so I'll drag that up. So again, I'm going to turn off the visibility of the other parts and then do the same kind of isolation thing here. So now I'm just sculpting right within this. So yeah, let's try. Oops, again, I'm on the block. I gotta be careful. I want to be on the plane here. There we go. So I'll, again, turn off smooth and divide this up a bunch. So again, if I'm, oh, there we go. So with wrap mode on now, if you wanted to like sculpt bricks or sculpt some other pattern, you can do that very, very quickly. Okay, and you see it kind of keeps it within this zone. Okay, so let's turn on the visibility of these other tools. Okay, so if you want to render this out basically as a texture, a trim sheet basically, you do have to change your document space. So this is one way to render this out. So this gets a little bit slow, just to let you know. So I'm going to set this to 4096. I'll turn off proportional as well. So 4096 by 4096. Hit resize. Yes, I want to resize. It usually leaves kind of a copy of the tool there. So you want to hit Control N to clear the canvas. Left click and drag this back out. Hit T to edit. Then I'm also going to go to Documents, and just to show you, oops, border. Let me just change my color here. Sorry about that. The Documents. There's my back color. Okay. Okay, so yes, if I go back to Document, I'm going to hit Zoom and Zoom out so I can see the full document, right? So we want to make sure that we're seeing the full space, because this is how we're going to basically generate or create the texture. So I'm going to click on the base plane that I still have, and if you hit F, it should fully frame that, okay? Now, I don't have color in here, but we'll sort of pretend I have some color, or I'll just throw some on so we can sort of see what that looks like. We should be in skin shade or flat color. Yeah, just make sure I'm on the right layers here. I'll go to throw some paint on this. Splotchy. There we go. Okay, so basically you're going to be in flat color, and you would generate your color path. So you basically go to Document, Export, right? And we just call this whatever, your trim sheet underscore color. Okay. Say okay to that. Next up, we'll turn off Colorize. And what you can do there is basically set this to white, and then I'm going to click on the flat color material swatch and switch it to RGB. So what's cool about this is that it basically gives you a normal map right there. So for the specular, you could take that, basically these two maps and the base plane, bring it into Substance, and then try to bake out that material, or you can export the mesh, both the high poly version and the single plane kind of poly version, and bake out a roughness metallic map if you want. But here I'll just say exports, and set this to normal. So there's a lot of ways to sort of generate these maps.